Hi, it's Greg here with your Daily 5. Okay, the first chart I want to talk about is the Dow Jones Industrial. It's not commonly looked at typically. I mean, it's the number one that they seem to use on the news all the time, the Dow up 200 or down 100 or whatever. But the important thing to remember is the Dow's actually made up of 30 mega cap companies or very large cap companies. And one of the things that I think is important to realize here, not just that the price action has not followed tech higher, which we know, but Microsoft, Apple, Intel, IBM, Cisco, I think they're, and Salesforce are all in the Dow, and so you've got this uptrend here that's trying to hold, and whether it does or it doesn't hold, I think the real critical piece of information to watch closely here. Notice how the PPO is rolling over right near zero, and when it goes below zero, that's a good place to watch. If you were watching that back in late January or early February 2022, it kind of gave you a clue that things weren't that well. So for me, a PPO going negative on something as big as this large cap index is a pretty important clue that don't be blinded by a few tech stocks going higher. So last time I was on, it was roughly April 24th, and at that time I was worried about the markets as well. And obviously the S&P and the NASDAQ broke out through the barrier to the upside. One of the stocks I had on my buy list was Merck. And so I wanted to follow that up with, it made a really nice move here trying to break out and go higher. And the real question is, has it got more in the tank? One thing I've noticed is the momentum was really short here. So normally what you're looking for is a big long uptrend. And what we've got here is exactly the opposite, where basically the uptrend, we're already on a bread price bar. This is as of Thursday. And we've got a big uptrend on the PPO momentum going 2.5 years. So is Merck as a defensive, and this is a question, not an answer, is Merck as a defensive, is it about to break down, signaling a new bull market for everything else? And that's a great question. Or is it just Merck is changing? And one of the things that I'm noticing a lot on Merck here is the big volume profile difference. Look at in 2022, the volume was huge in 2021, that was fine. But then in 2022, the volume started to decline, which was okay. And then roughly in June, July, got down to a relatively low level and then just has continued to get lower and lower in the last 6 weeks. So during this rally, there was not a lot of love for this. So to me, I just think it's an important chart. I obviously could have drawn more trend lines on here, but the the idea being, if Merck starts to break down, we really have to watch and say, is this a move out of defensives like healthcare and into a more aggressive S&P 500, or is Merck just a large cap telling us that everything's going to have trouble here? So it's a really important chart, I think, especially considering the momentum has been improving through 21 and 22. You might remember 2022 wasn't that easy a market for most investors, but look at the bounce when the S&P, when things started to bounce in October. Merck actually fired right up here. So it was pretty strong during the bull part of the market. So it makes me think it's more of a weak stock and could be signaling something bigger. So we've had a couple of bank failures already, and then we had Capital One come out in the middle of I want to say April, and what they talked about was they're noticing that their clients are starting to really have trouble making their payments. And because of the clientele that Capital One has, they typically show up 1 to 2 quarters early. So today, my research or my data shows that today after the market closed, Capital One deposits were put on lock so that it didn't empty out the bank again, and KeyBank was also in there. So you're sitting here watching this. US Bank Corp has had their credit default swaps kind of take off to the upside. But as a Canadian, we have a much smaller, tighter banking system. We have five or six majors, and then we've kind of got four other banks, whereas the America's just got so many banks. My point here was this is Canada's strongest bank, and one of the things to really notice here is this bank is going nowhere. There's a real top building here in the first part of this year, and this looks like it's ready to break down hard. And this week it's down 5% just to start with, and this is again after Thursday's close. PPO rolling over and going below zero here. I think this is a pretty critical spot for the banks, especially in Canada. And if we start to have a bigger bank problem, I think that could really unravel the markets here if all of a sudden we start to have bank after bank. So this is on the back of the day where Nvidia went vertical and went from 300 to 390 or something like that, and it would only take it to get into the low 400s for it to be a $1 trillion company. Marvell reported after the bell on Thursday and absolutely soared. So the price would be up here around the $60 level. I think it got to 59 in after hours. And so you were at 40 just 2 weeks ago, and this week the price bar is going to be all the way up here. So a huge move of 50% over the last 2 weeks for Marvell. And again, that AI platform spreading out really, really wide. I think one of the things I always like to look at is how did it work when we had some sort of moves like that. And back in 2020, these things jumped up and then went sideways for a little bit. That was quite a catalyst, 2020. The other place on this chart that we've had big moves is right up near the top, and it went sideways for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm not sure there's a need to chase it and maybe let it consolidate before it really gets its next win. But it definitely looks like investors are going to hug the AI theme for a while here. At Osprey Strategic, we do have a chart list called AI in our Osprey opportunities, and you can just scroll through and see all of the names that are attached to that. Now, the last one I want to end with is an interesting one because it focuses on the bullish percent index for the S&P 500. And what we're noticing this week is it's going back below the 50% level. This was at the end of February here. It dropped down below into that March low and then rebounded. But I think the thing to know is also we're setting up here with a series of a high, a lower high, another lower high, and another lower high recently. And this is what we did in 2022, end of 2021. And kind of when we really started to live below the 50% level was trouble. So I don't know if we're there yet, but it's one worth watching. Now, the second component to that over here, I've got the stocks above the 200-day moving average. And, a lot of people have it with a moving average or whatever. I think it's just best to look at the raw data. And so these are histograms of where it was at the end of each week. And so now here we are sitting down here around 41% on the Thursday. And we've moved all the way down from 60% just 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we've had quite a bit of destruction here, almost 20% of the stocks in the S&P 500 have changed from above their 200 to below their 200. But more importantly, the trend is clearly washing down here. When we start to break down from this high level here, it makes me think we're more in a 2008 period where we got low, we tried to rally up, we got a bit more of a rally here. And the real question is, does this thing start to break down in earnest? We saw it again in 2015-16. After being low, we rallied back up. My question is, how come this isn't taking off to the upside and continuing into the new bull market status? And I continue to think, here's 2009 in March. Well, by July, this thing was at 90%. Here we are with the October low. We got up to 70%. But, 9 months later or whatever we're at, 8 months later, we still haven't got any sort of big push to the top. Okay. So anyway, my suggestion is that there may be more trouble coming. My Schnell Strength Index is currently at 32%. If you like the work we do at Osprey Strategic, feel free to head on over there and check out what we do. I think you'll find some pretty exciting stuff. And thanks for watching. Have a great week. Bye-bye.